Now Joseph, when he was telling the Pharaoh about this dream, says to the Pharaoh, appoint a wise man. Why is that so significant? As a kingdom citizen, you know the times and you know what to do. That's what's supposed to happen. And Joseph was operating in that. He knew the times. He knew what was coming because God had showed the Pharaoh. And he had given Joseph the interpretation, and Joseph knew right away what he needed to do. He didn't need to go and fast and pray. He had the answer right then. This is what you need to do, Pharaoh. Whoever you appoint, this is what they need to do. This is the strategy. This is the strategy that's going to take the nation from a position of boom and into, when this crisis hits, this is what needs to be done. So right now we're facing this COVID-19 situation. We're not just dealing with a healthcare crisis. We're dealing with an information crisis because so many people are saying they don't know what the truth is. They're hearing different sources telling them different things. There are studies where they're finding that children are being traumatized. This is an information crisis now because in a lot of ways the media may or may not want to be helpful, but they aren't always being helpful, and is creating crisis even from the information that's been presented. And the other crisis that's coming out of this, as we've seen in the UK, and I'm sure you've seen in your country, the financial implications, the financial, beating that this thing has brought about, the financial crisis that this situation has resulted in. And God has created you with the ability to solve problems. And for some of you, it's not just about being able to manage the crisis at the personal level in which you've had to go through, but it's also being able to manage crisis at a national level, because you are wired with the capacity to handle national leadership. Capacity is how much you can handle, not just in quantity, but in levels as well. So sometimes people can manage making a pie or 2 pies, and another one can make 10 pies or 20 pies or 100 pies. But when we're dealing with Joseph, we're not just dealing with how much on one level he could manage, but how much for the different levels of people that he could manage. Every time Joseph went through a test and he went through a crisis, Joseph was able to survive. Joseph was able to thrive. He was able to manage, and he was learning something else that was building his management, his leadership capacity to manage the weightiness that eventually he could end up leading the country of Egypt to be second in command to the Pharaoh. So some of you are praying for positions in government and politics. What you need to be praying for is to ask God, what is my natural capacity level, and what is it that I can do to develop myself in developing my management capacity? And he will give you tests. Prepare for them. The tests will come, but those tests are going to help you to be able to manage capacity as well. So Joseph was taking these people through economic boom to economic stability. So in the markets, you hear about the boom periods where it's the bull market. You're charging like a bull. And then then you move into when the market goes into decline, and they're called the bear markets. And those things are exactly what was going on, what Joseph saw in this 70 years. He saw the boom and he saw the bust. But because he was able to manage, the country of Egypt could remain stable even during a crisis. Now, why is Joseph significant? Because Joseph is not just a person who is able to manage what goes on in their nation, but there are some leaders. Remember, we talked about what I just mentioned about capacity? Joseph's management ability had literally skyrocketed to the point that he was now in charge of managing a global crisis. Egypt was positioned, because of Joseph's management ability, Egypt was positioned to assist the world as it was known in that time. So taxes, what's going on now with this crisis? The US can print more money. If the need arises, we've not gotten to that stage yet, but the UK can print more money. You couldn't print more grain. So it's only you got to work with what you had. And so they weren't taxed in money. People would have been taxed in grain during the time that there was the 7 years of abundance. And how do the governments manage the taxes they collect will come up and show up in times of crisis. Because if they were managing well, they would have something in the reserves to pull on. So what did people do? As people would do when they're in a crisis, they cry out to the government. So they cried out to Pharaoh. You know, you could imagine, what did you do? What did you do with the tax dollars or the tax grain that you collected from us? And Pharaoh said, go to Joseph. Go to Joseph. Because Pharaoh said, I put this in the hands of a capable, a wise man from the beginning. I can sit back and I can trust that he knows what he's doing. He's got it under control. So in economies, you tend to have cycles. So God was showing Joseph economic cycles. 7 years of plenty, 7 years of lack, 7 years of decline that was going to come. Now, in general, nowadays, we look at the economic boom to bust period as being roughly 10-year cycles. You've got the 10 years where everything's going well, but people have forgotten that in those, because things are going so well, they don't plan for it, that it's going to be the end of the cycle when things are not going to be, things are going to get tight, and you have to be tightening your belt straps a bit more. So in economic cycles are inevitable. So you need to be preparing yourself for them, for when there is the downturn in the economy. And that's why we even started out with make the most of this opportunity. Make the most of this opportunity. Joseph presented the first economic stimulus package. When the crisis started to get worse, when the famine started to get worse, there came a point where people had given back everything. They had given him everything, including their bodies, in terms of they were willing to sell themselves into slavery. They had given everything back to the Egyptian economy just to be able to have food to eat. And Joseph came to the place and he said, we need to start taking an equity stake. And he decided that he would invest seed capital, we call it now. And he would give them seed to get agricultural businesses started. And they took out, the government of Egypt took out a 1/5 equity stake in these agricultural businesses. So instead of it just being like we say, governments tend to not have money of their own, they were investing in these businesses so then they could have a return on the investment. So by taking this, when people were given this seed capital, Joseph wasn't just looking at now, he was looking at when the next cycle comes and the time gets rough again, we have something to draw on. You know, a friend of ours was telling us recently about what St. Kitts did in the 1990s when they had a healthcare a crisis taking place, and they said never again, and they started to address it. That's how you need to be preparing. What are you doing now when you see this to not just address now, but when things settle down, what are you going to do to prepare for the next time? So you can't forget how important it is when you're going through this, that the ability to think strategically is tied to something else that's going on.
Yes, so we need to remember that crisis must be dealt with from a place of love and a heart that is pure. Now, it was important for Joseph to forgive his brothers.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you forgive,
Mm-hmm.
it actually lift the weight off,
Mm-hmm.
and it remove the cloud from your eyes,
Mm-hmm.
so you can see clearly going forward.
Mm.
And I don't believe that Joseph just forgave his brother. I think that Joseph also forgave Potiphar's wife.
Mm.
You know, and so that gave him even another level, put him on another level in the way he operated, because it's like when he started when he was operating at that level for Pharaoh,
Mm-hmm.
he had to be able to see things clearer. He had to be able to see, you know, the different stages of what would be happening,
Mm-hmm.
and what is it that he needed to put in place,
Mm-hmm.
so that not only that his country could survive the famine,
Mm-hmm.
but the other nations could
Mm-hmm.
depend on Egypt
Mm-hmm.
because of the different things that he put in place.
And that could only come through a heart of forgiveness.
Yeah.
You know, we had put something on our social media page probably fairly recently, and it says that crisis is your opportunity to distinguish yourself as a winner, not a whiner. Now, Joseph could have cried the victimization, the racism, the xenophobia. He could have done it the whole 9 yards. But he chose to rise above the easy crutches that, and that is what distinguished him level after level after level, to be prepared to handle the responsibility and the power of second in command in Egypt.
It's also important to know that um, when you come into that position, to recognize that it's not about your color, it's not about how tall you are, you know, and you can come with you can come with your ability, you can come with capacity, but there's one important thing. If you don't have it, you still can't work. You need to have
Mm-hmm.
that confidence to be able to manage at that level also.
Mm-hmm. So the confidence, a lot of times, it comes from being clear on your leadership identity, having a clear purpose and a vision for your life, and definitely for the nation. And so, just to wrap up some of this stuff is, you may be able to manage your personal crisis, but can you manage the national crisis? And one of the things that we see with Joseph is that he was able to put aside, to step outside of his personal crisis to take on a national crisis. And that, in a sense, is a part of dying to yourself as a leader. You're not just dealing with personal stuff, you're also having to deal with national stuff. And in those kinds of roles, people don't really care about what's going on with you personally. They just want the results.
Yes.
They just want the results. So for those of you who are interested in developing your leadership skills a bit more, we have a Politics and Principles leadership coaching course program. It's a 6-week online coaching program, and you can always contact us for more information on that. It has definitely been a pleasure being here with you today. You can check us out on social media at Kenley College. That's Kenley College. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. What do we want to leave you with today? Manage so that you can be trusted to take on the next level of leadership.
Yes.
Whether that's in government, politics, or whatever field you are in, manage well, because it's for this reason that you were born, and God wired you to bring the solution that your nation needs.
Yes. You are unique. You're special. You're so special that it's only you, one person like you, God created. You know, you alone have your fingerprint. So there's something special that you bring to the table, and God wants you to shine, and not just for yourself, but to represent the kingdom in this earth. You know, bring His kingdom come. Let His will be done in this earth as it is in heaven. That is what God's looking out for you to do.
Okay, so we may see you again soon, but whatever you do, manage well.
Manage well.